Hi friends, this is Kim from Creative DIY Purpose. Welcome. Today I have 10 home decor projects for you. We're going to be upcycling some thrift store finds and creating fall decor from scraps of wood. The colors that inspired me with these fall projects are King's Gold and Barn Red from Apple Barrel, and a mixture of Acadia silk paint from Dixie Belle and lots of antique white from Apple Barrel to lighten it up. You'll want to stick with me to the end of the video because today I'm going to have 3 free printables for you, along with the fall DIY playlist for even more ideas. For project number 1, we're going to create some festive fall spindles. Here's a supply list if you'd like to take a screenshot. Remember a few months back, we repurposed a chair into a stool and I kept the spindles. In the spring, I did a similar project and turned the spindles into carrots. However, they didn't sell because I put them in my booth too late. So I brought them back home and today we're going to give them a makeover. It worked out perfect because I had 3 spindles and 3 different colors. So I applied 2 coats on each spindle, allowed them to dry, and then using antique wax from Waverly, I watered that mixture down and applied it with a sponge brush. Now, once I had a chance to dry, I wiped it back and they weren't as dark as I wanted them to be. I did get it the way that I wanted to by dipping the paintbrush straight into the antique wax and applying it to the areas that I wanted to darken up. I only let it sit on there for a few minutes and then wiped it back with a cloth. And then I did the same for the other 2 spindles, and I felt better about the way that they came out. I don't know, I've been really loving adding the antique wax and dark wax to things lately, giving them a more moody look. Right, so now to add an embellishment and tie those spindles up. Last year at Hobby Lobby, I got this pumpkin pick and did not have a chance to do anything with it. So I pulled that out of my stash along with these berries that they were on something that I thrifted, hot glued them together. And we're going to put that right on the center of those spindles. I'm going to wrap the spindles with some jute twine and tie that off in a little bow. And then I'll hot glue the pumpkin piece right onto the twine. Okay, so I need your help. Can you give me some ideas on what else we can use spindles for the fall? I do have 2 ideas, which I'll share with you shortly. For project number 2, grab a plain wood sign and some real leaves and your favorite fall stencil, and let's get started. I purchased this plain sign at a thrift store, and the stencil that I'm going to use for this project, I purchased from Amazon, I'm going to say 3 to 4 years ago. I now purchase all my stencils from the stencilsmith.com, and I did look over there, and this is what I found for a similar one. I prefer the font of the first one. I love the circular ones. Definitely going to have to get one of those in the future. I have 3 fall colors and we've got 3 fall words. So I decided that each one's going to be a different color. Unfortunately, when the yellow paint dried, it was so faint against the wood that you couldn't really make it out. I mixed the yellow with some truffle paint from Waverly and it ended up okay. Now on to my favorite step. You're going to want to grab your ink pad and some real leaves from outside. I could not believe that in my yard I had yellow leaves all over the ground. We've been getting a lot of storms, and it has been in the 50s at night. If you turn your leaf over, you're going to get a lot more texture, and you're going to be able to see the vein that runs through the leaf a lot better. Taking the ink pad, apply a lot of ink to that leaf. Decide where you want it placed. And I would recommend using a brayer roller. I did not have mine on hand, so I just used my fingers. I did notice that these leaves were not as durable as they usually are in the fall once they've had a chance to dry, so I had to be really careful. On the plus side, they're not so dry and they're more flexible. So when you lift up the leaf, if there's a spot that's missing ink, you can reapply the ink onto the back of the leaf to fill in any blank spots. Another idea would be to apply all the leaf stamps first, all over the sign, and then put your stencil over the top of them. For the final step, I'm going to create a simple scrappy bow. I got a few strips of fabric and some burlap ribbon, and I think some lace. Laying them out flat, I want to say it's about 8 inches of ribbon. Then I took some twine, wrapped it around the center and tied that off. And then taking a pair of scissors and cutting off any uneven ends. I think it needs something in the middle, so I'm going to take that pumpkin pick, the one that I did get from Hobby Lobby last year, and cut off one of the smaller pumpkins and 2 pit berries and string them right through that jute twine in the middle to add a little more texture. Then we're going to grab that hot glue gun and put it all together. Project number 3 is a super quick upgrade for this cheese crock that I have had for sale forever. And I had another light brown one that sold right away, but this one for some reason is still there even after I marked it down. Let's add one of the labels from the Vintage Label to collection from Redesign. I think it has a better chance of selling. What do you guys think? It's a simple upgrade that took me not even 2 minutes, and that included me scrubbing the outside of the crock to make sure that there wasn't any grease or dust on the outside. If you leave the lid off, I think that you could use this as a base. It would be really cute, maybe with some dried florals in it for the fall, or even melt some wax and turn it into a candle. I'm sure I have other plain items in my booth that I could add a transfer to and get it sold quicker. How about you guys? Do you have anything that could use a quick makeover? Here's another quick and easy project. We're going to make a scrapwood sign. I had it in my stash. It was cut off of a shelf and it had already been sanded, so it was perfect. I watered down some Waverly antique wax. I apply it with a sponge, wipe it back with a lint-free cloth, put it outside and let it dry. It was a nice hot sunny day, so it dried quick. We're going to use that same stencil, only this time we're going to use the white paint from Apple Barrel. My goal was to make a nice neutral sign that could go with any decor. The yellow painter's tape that I use is the brand Frog Tape, and it's very gentle on all surfaces. The final step is to add 2 saw teeth hangers to the back of the sign. I use a pair of jewelry pliers to hold the nail because it's so tiny, and a hammer. What type of hooks do you like to use on the back of your wall hangings? Project 5 and 6 are kind of combined. We're going to be making fall decor from 2x4 wood blocks. You can cut them a variety of sizes like I did. And there's my helper Rocky. He's my shadow. He's always got to be right by my side. After they were sanded, I took those same 3 colors, applied 2 coats of paint to the wood blocks. I painted all of the blocks, put them outside, let them dry because it was a beautiful day. Let's grab a couple crockery stamps from IOD, put them right on the front. These are going to be turned into pumpkins. You could also use rub-on transfers on the front to get a similar look. I thought that a bee stencil or a bee stamp would look really good on this bright yellow. This is, again, one of the stencils that I got from that Amazon pack. And I think this was my first time using it. Let's turn the bee into a pumpkin as well. I'm going to stencil some honeycomb right down there at the bottom and maybe one right up there at the top. Now, hindsight is great because I'm thinking it would have been really nice to put the honeycomb on really light on the backdrop and then go up over it in a darker color for the bee. This stencil came in that Amazon pack, the one that I got a few years back. I know right now the Stencil Smith does have sunflower stencils and you can get them in different sizes. The sunflower, this welcome block, and the next block are going to be used as basic shelf sitters. You could also use them as bowl fillers with the smaller wood blocks. This welcome stencil was also in that Amazon pack. So the day that I did the projects for the video, I was also making items for my booth. I had all of my stencils and my supplies out on the table, and I probably did 30 or 40 pieces. It's so easy when you already have everything laid out and you just get into this routine. I kept drinking coffee, grabbing more items. It was a good, productive day. The stencil that I'll be using next, you can purchase at thestencilsmith.com. And at any time you use the coupon code Creative DIY or use my link that I have posted below, you're going to save 15%. I'm going to use that stencil to make 2 more shelf sitters. I love using stencils for so many reasons. Number one, you buy it once and you're done with it. As long as you take good care of them, they're going to last for quite a while. Another reason that I love them is especially when you get the larger stencils, they're so versatile. You can use the whole stencil. You can just use a portion of them. You can overlap them, layer them. Okay, so once these had a chance to dry, this is what they look like. To me, they were too bright. Some people might like that, but I wanted to take them outside, just stress them all along the edges, and then go around with some of the watered down Waverly antique wax. I applied it along the edges first, wipe that back, and then applied a coat all over the entire piece. That way it was a little bit darker along the edges, which I liked a lot better. I did, however, go over them with a brush and some antique wax on some of the areas that I felt were too light, just like I did with the spindles. And here's how the 3 signs turned out. Let me know what you think about them and what you would have done differently. Yay, now on to one of my favorite things to do. We're going to make some pumpkins. We're going to use some Gorilla Wood Glue. I like to apply it with a paintbrush. We're going to use part of those chair spindles. They're going to make great stems. I left some plain and painted one to get a different look. I brush on the Gorilla Glue and then add a dab of hot glue. The hot glue gun's over there. I need a longer cord. And then press that down. And that way it adheres right away. And you get the long-term hold from the Gorilla Glue. I'm going to hold that into place. Wrap some jute twine around the base of the stem. The little spiral thing over there, I cut that off of the leaf. And I end up ripping that out and putting in a brown one because it bothered me that the greens kind of clashed. I decided to go over the green with some yellow paint and kind of tone that down. And when that didn't work, that's when I tore off the leaf and the spiral. And as you can see, I added some Spanish moss and a different leaf. And added a little bit more moss just to make it balanced on that side. Okay, so it's not what I had in my mind, but it's better than it started out. I want to keep the bee pumpkin simple. I added a wine cork for the stem and a leaf. For the dark green pumpkin, I added a leaf and some of those berries from the pick and a wine cork. Simple, rustic, and primitive. And for the sunflower pumpkin, it couldn't have been easier. I glued on a part of the spindle, and where I had cut the spindle to make the stem, it was a lighter wood. I took a brush with antique wax and applied it to the top so that it blended in. Let's make one more pumpkin using napkins that I purchased from the Dollar Tree last year. Here's 2 of the pumpkins that I made last year using them. We'll see how it comes out on one of the green blocks of wood versus the white painted ones. So when you're working with napkins, they're 2-ply. You have to take off one of the plies. No lie, it took me probably 6 minutes to get this thing apart. I had to stop filming and get it closer to the light just to be able to pull it apart. Should have called one of the kids to come down and help me because they probably would have seen it a lot quicker and easier than I did. So for the glue mixture, I've been using the decoupage gel from Redesign, and I love it. I had some on hand for my furniture pieces, so I've been using it for my smalls, and it works really well. I do have the videos sped up. I really don't work this fast, but I was in a hurry. I did get heavy-handed with the gel, so I had some wrinkles that I really didn't want. So I got a piece of saran wrap, went over the top to get out some of the bubbles. It worked. I was going to break out the ink stamps to be able to print the word fall on this wood pumpkin. And then I thought, well, what if somebody doesn't have the alphabet stamps? What's something else they could do? And I was looking down at the stencil and it had the letters that I needed. So I thought we'd give it a try. The two L's seem to be a little bit smaller, shorter than the A and the F. But I think in all, it came out okay. Gonna apply some Gorilla Glue and wood glue to the stem. Get that on there, add some embellishments, and then run some antique wax up over the top of the stem. And this piece is a wrap. For project number 7, we're going to create a sunflower wall hanging from a thrifted wooden picture frame. There's 4 major steps to this project. The first one is to remove the fasteners in the back and paint the entire piece. And the second step is to apply the stencils on the front of the frame. I decided to go with 2 words, one at the top and one at the bottom. For the third step, we're going to decorate the inside of the picture frame. I want to put a sunflower in the center. It's a little too bright with what I've got going on today, so I applied Waverly Antique Wax onto the sunflower using a paintbrush. I wanted a piece of lace for the center, and I have this little girl's vest that was torn in a spot, so I've been cutting it off using it for projects. So we're going to put it in the center and cut it off so it's nice and even. And of course, I realized after that the hole to hang this is on the side, and I put the words in the front on the wrong way. But that's okay, because I'm going to plug that hole and attach a sawtooth hanger, which I think will work better anyway. I'm using scissors to hold the lace down to add the hot glue so that I don't burn my finger. Then we're going to adhere the sunflower in the center with some hot glue by applying it to the underside of the petals and gluing them directly onto the frame. You could cut out a piece of cardstock or cardboard, glue the lace onto that, and then glue the center of the sunflower on as well. But this is just another option. And now the last step is to make a hanger for it. We're going to do that out of one of the chair spindles and give it 2 coats of the red paint. After it dries, I do a heavy distress using my sander. We're going to brush on some wood glue because I want the spindle to adhere to the top of the frame. Not so much that it's going to hold it into place permanently. I only need it to hold it temporarily so that I can drill pilot holes and use nails to adhere the spindle onto the frame so that way it's nice and even. I brush on a coat of Gorilla Glue and use a little bit of the hot glue to hold it in place. Since the spindle has a lot of curves to it, it's only holding down on the frame, I think in 3 small places. I let that dry overnight, then drilled 2 small pilot holes and hammered in paneling nails up on the top of the spindle going through into the frame. I chose these paneling nails because they were long enough and they have such a small head you can barely see them up at the top. I hammered them in where the spindle was actually touching the frame. It's not even, but you can't see the nail up at the top of the frame. Next, we're going to apply 2 O-rings on the top of the spindle. I did pre-drill 2 tiny holes at the top to make it easier to thread the O-ring. Because it's so small, it's kind of hard to grip, so I just grabbed a pair of jewelry pliers, and that made it even easier. All right, so we got 2 of those O-rings in. Now it's time to grab some jute twine and make a hanger. Project number 8, we're going to take a thrifted plastic serving tray and give it a new look. So this is kind of what it looked like when I purchased it from the thrift store before. I had 3 failed attempts on giving this thing a makeover. And what kept catching me up was these raised leaves. And I think it's because I was trying to cover them up instead of accentuate them. Well, hey, it's fall, so it's a perfect time for take 4. So I'm using truffle paint from Waverly and my stencil brush, the Black Crow stencil, and we're going to add some frog tape to make sure that it stays in place because I do not want to mess this tray up again. All right, so let's talk about the base coat, what you see. Since it is plastic, it had a base coat of bonding boss, which is good for slick items and as a primer. I brushed white paint all over the entire piece, and I did it both horizontally, vertically to create texture. Then I used Sawmill Gravy by Dixie Belle, then applied it using a very dry brush. Matter of fact, I don't even think unless it's in the right light that you can see it. And that's how I found it today. After being stored away for months, I took a wax brush and some black wax from Dixie Belle. So I put some black wax from Dixie Belle on a wax brush and went around the raised leaves to make them pop a little bit more, and in random spots all over the tray, as you can see. And here's the name again of the stencil. It's the Black Crow Sunflower, and you may have recognized it from the project we did a few weeks ago where we made the sunflower seeds box. Have you ever had that happen to you? You have a project that you've tried 2-3 times, and then one day you just grab it and within just a few minutes, it's complete. For project number 9, we're going to make a sunflower riser out of a wood scrap piece. These are the supplies if you want to take a screenshot. If you like the sunflower print that I use in this project, you can head over to my blog and download it for free. I have that linked below for you in the description. I printed the design out on rice paper, but Amazon no longer carries the rice paper that I used to purchase all the time. I do still have some of the pack left. As soon as I can find one that's comparable, I'll let you guys know. Or please let me know if you have a particular brand that you prefer and where you purchase it from. If you don't have rice paper, you can always print it out on tissue paper. But if you're using an inkjet printer, you're going to want to spray it first with some sealer so that way your ink doesn't smear when you apply your decoupage gel. Since the piece of paper wasn't long enough to cover the whole board, I ripped the design along the edges because I like the torn look. So I'm applying some of the decoupage gel from Redesign. Super easy. Spread a thin coat right onto the wood and then laid the design down, working in small sections and applying the decoupage gel right over the top of it. Did get a little heavy-handed, but it wiped off really easy with a cloth. And I did bring the paper up along the front side of the board. I took 4 wooden candle cups and painted them with the Waverly Antique Wax. I glued these on using the Gorilla Glue. And once I had a chance to dry, I looked at it and realized that the wood was just too light. It just didn't look right. So here I am, after the whole piece was supposed to be finished, applying the antique wax. And I do wipe it back and think it ended up looking a little bit better. Yay, we finally get to my favorite project of the day. We're going to be making autumn napkin rings. Here's the supply list. So the first thing I did was gather all my supplies. You're going to want some leaves that are going to look as close as you can get to pumpkin leaves. Unfortunately, I did not have the same color leaves in similar sizes. I was only able to grab a few in the size that I needed from this pick. And then I had random leaves here and there. So that's why mine are all different colors and different shapes. I cut the remaining pumpkins off of the pick from Hobby Lobby. And these are the velvet mini pumpkins. I also grabbed some pip berries and some of those berries I had left over from the previous project. Grab the smallest of your leaves, bend the stem to the pumpkin over, and put your leaf right in between the pumpkin and the stem. Apply both wood glue and hot glue to the leaf to adhere it to the napkin ring. Then add some hot glue in between the leaf and the pumpkin to make sure it's tacked down. I'm so sorry, I'm out of frame. I'm trying to size up to see what the next size leaf would be. And you're going to want to put it a little bit at an angle. Now for the remaining leaves and for the berries, I only used hot glue to apply them onto the napkin ring. If I were to sell them, I probably would have used E6000 along with hot glue. But because I'm keeping them and filming, I thought it'd be best if I use hot glue. You'll glue the middle leaf in last because that is going to cover any gap that you have between the other two leaves. I use scissors to help me put the leaf in position so there's no gaps and so I don't melt off any more of my fingerprints. Next step, I grabbed a couple strands of pip berries. I love these jewelry pliers. These I purchased at a yard sale. My daughter uses them a lot. And then the package that you see down on the table was brand new. It was purchased from a store that hasn't been in business in decades. And I found them in my mom's sewing box. I decided to go with just one berry right there on the side for a little pop of color. I got thinking I might add another berry. What do you guys think? Should I add one more? Don't forget to pick up your 3 free fall printables over at creativepurpose.com. The direct link is in the description box below, along with the link to the stencilsmith.com. You can not only save 15%, but check out their amazing holiday collection. And you won't want to miss my fall playlist for DIYs and vintage decor ideas. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a super blessed week, and I'll see you next Monday.